The European Union finds itself mired in an asylum quota battle as migrants continue to arrive. New Ebola cases surge in Guinea and Sierra Leone. And a member of Bollywood's royal family makes a big comeback at Cannes. Africa 54 starts right now.
Good evening and welcome. I'm Vincent McCorry. This is Africa 54. We'll have those stories in a moment. But first, as the civil war in South Sudan rages on, more than 100,000 refugees have fled to camps in neighboring Uganda. The United Nations Children's Fund says $36 million is needed just to meet these refugees' basic needs. The European Commission has donated $1 million, which to UNICEF is significant, but far from enough. Sergino Roosblatt reports from a camp in northern Uganda.
By now, Akong Cheong knows how to prepare the nutritious plum peanut for her twin daughters. It's a peanut-based product with extra nutrients for children who are severely malnourished. A few months ago, the two babies were underfed and in dire condition. Luckily, there was help in the refugee camp where they were born and where their mother has been living since 2013. For many other children at the Rhino refugee settlement in Uganda's Arua district, malnourishment remains a serious problem. The camp holds about 90,000 refugees. Relief workers like Joseph Mbabasi say about 20% of the children are malnourished.
The biggest issue here is high rates of severe acute malnutrition, especially among children below 5 years. Basically, with malnutrition, it's not cosmetological, so you can't see it. You need to assess the child. But when you get to see it in the visible form, that means it is in the severest form.
Nearly 2 million people have been displaced from their homes since South Sudan's civil war began in late 2013. At the moment, 136,000 live in the camps across Uganda, more than two-thirds of them women and children. Here at the refugee camp's health center, children are continuously being screened for malnutrition. This girl's condition is unfortunately not satisfactory. She needs to stay on supplements and return in a week to see whether she has gained enough weight. Apart from screening children, UNICEF and the aid group Concern Worldwide hold training sessions for mothers, teaching them how to detect malnutrition and hopefully prevent it. Akong Cheong says it's here where she learned how to make a nutritious meal for her children.
I was taught how to make porridge for my two young babies and also how to make tomato juice for them. That's why the children are better now.
The European Commission recently donated €1 million for the camps, an amount which is still far from the $36 million needed to meet the refugees' basic needs. Still, UNICEF's Jerry Dyer says the organization is thankful for the donation.
We are feeling the pressure as the rest of the world is. Just look at what's just recently happened in Nepal, unfortunately unfolding crisis in Burundi. We are definitely feeling the pressure. The nutrition program is a very expensive program, but it's one of the most important. A child being able to have water, a child being able to have a full stomach, it's about the dignity of these people.
With no ending to the South Sudan conflict in sight, the pressure on these camps may go on for months or years to come. Sergio Roosblatt for VOA News, Arua, Uganda.
Well, street battles and gunfire erupted again in the Burundi capital on Thursday as protesters against President Pierre Nkurunziza rejected his calls for calm in the East African nation, an ethnic tinderbox with a long history of civil war and genocide. Soldiers and police fired tear gas and warning shots in the air as they faced off against scores of young men, throwing rocks and burning makeshift barricades in the roads. One man was shot in the head by a bullet while another was hit in the leg. Thursday's violence followed a night of heavy gunfire in the restive neighborhood of Musaga, where residents spoke of several hours of running battles between police and gangs of youth.
You see, these are the things that are just happening now. It is not right. It is not right, man. They come to the homes of people, families with children and kill citizens when citizens are just asking for a better life. No. These things should not exist at all. We have to stop these acts. Burundi is tired. We want just peace.
This is a person who has just been killed in front of our eyes. We are asking U.S. President Barack Obama and the rest of the world to rise up and be seen. They need to stop this man.
Well, in a state television address late on Wednesday, Nkurunziza stressed the need for national unity, saying that Burundi's violent past, including a civil war that only ended in 2005 after the deaths of 300,000 people, could not be ignored. The protesters dismissed his words as a charade. Well, turning to the migrant crisis, more than 900 migrants were rescued on Wednesday from 3 overcrowded boats en route to Europe from North Africa. According to an Italian Coast Guard official, one body was recovered. This French Navy patrol ship rescued 297 migrants from a fishing boat in the southern Mediterranean on Wednesday. The crew of the ship provided food and water to the group, which included 51 women and children, and 16 people received medical treatment. The 20-meter vessel was discovered about 190 miles from the Italian coast by an Italian spotter plane. The migrants, whose nationalities were not given, were due to be taken to a destination in Italy. The European Union says it is still seeking a UN resolution on attacking smugglers.
Probably we need to do more altogether to tackle the problem, not only by rescuing migrants, but tackle the problems at their roots. Namely, there is trafficking, there is a lot of money involved, there is some political situations in Libya that needs to be solved as well. It is a huge problem, but we need to find solutions for that.
Well, on Monday, EU ministers approved an operation that will establish military force to combat human smuggling across the Mediterranean Sea. But the EU still needs to secure Libya's and the United Nations Security Council's permission to operate near the Libyan coast and in international waters. Well, more than 30,000 migrants from Africa or the Middle East who have crossed the Mediterranean to Europe this year have landed in Italy. A European Commission plan to share out the burden of handling asylum requests has already triggered objections from opponents of immigration. Now, for more perspective into the EU migrants' dilemma, Joel Millman, spokesperson of the International Organization of Migration, joins us via Skype live from Geneva. Welcome, Joel.
Thank you.
Now, we have been talking for weeks on end about the best solution to the migrant crisis. From your perspective, where are we at this point?
Well, I think we're moving in a direction we want to be moving in. The fact that they're even discussing quotas, they're talking about resettlement, they're even acting as though this is something that they just have to grapple with, is something that IOM and other agencies have been talking about for several months. We think that the migrants really need to be given some kind of guarantee that they can enter freely without fear of deportation and possibly reunite with their families, which might be the most efficient way of integrating them in Europe. I can understand why the quota system has caused pause for some of the EU members. I don't believe, and I don't think anyone else believes, that the size of a country or the size of its population should dictate where it fits in the sharing of the responsibility. I think what we can rely on is the fact that migrants have their own communications networks and their own family networks and community networks in many countries across Europe, and they themselves will know where the best place is for them to touch down. And we should let them act as the economic actors they are, which is to find the proper spot for themselves.
Now, there is the other plan, of course, of having this very special operation specifically to target smugglers. Some have criticized this. What is the best way forward?
Well, I mean, I think you're referring to the criticism of attacking the vessels and the crafts, which sounds like a drastic step, but we're confident that if any organization, any part of the EU wishes to sink a craft, they'll first verify that it is being used for migrant smuggling, and if it's being used for migrant smuggling just in the moment that the migrants are aboard, I'm certain that they'll guarantee their safety and make sure all the innocent people who are passing through are taken off the boat and brought to safety. So if you look at it from that perspective, it's a positive step. We also think that the consensus around prosecuting and punishing criminal gangs that have acted pretty much with impunity for the last couple of years, possibly immunity as well, is also an important step. Mm-hmm. But we also wish to stress that it isn't just Europe's responsibility. We see a role for the African Union, we see a role for the Arab Union, we see roles for the transit countries as well to step up and participate in whatever solution is developed.
And very quickly, up to this point, what kind of role have you seen the African Union play to give some help here?
Well, what we are hopeful of is that they'll help mediate a ceasefire and an end to some of the conflict in Libya, which at the moment is probably the driving force behind this much of an exodus from that coast. So when the security situation solidifies, and in fact, when we can honestly say there is a security situation right now, there's an insecurity situation, then we think a lot of this traffic will fall off, which is what we're hopeful of.
Well, Joel, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Well, Joel Millman is the spokesperson for the International Organization of Migration. Now to the Middle East. A Syrian rights group says the Islamic State group is now in full control of the famed ruins of the ancient city of Palmyra. Hours after seizing the Syrian town from government forces, the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights says ISIS took over the 2,000-year-old UNESCO World Heritage Site late Wednesday. So far, there are no reports of any damage to the ruins. The militants pushed nearly all of the Syrian government troops out of Palmyra by late Wednesday, following a week-long siege and heavy fighting in the city's north, according to the observatory. The siege of Palmyra comes just days after ISIS fighters captured Iraq's western city of Ramadi, leaving 500 people dead. Well, the U.S. has released thousands of documents recovered from Osama bin Laden's compound in Pakistan after he was killed in a raid by U.S. Navy SEALs 4 years ago. The documents, made public Wednesday, range from personal letters to bin Laden's son Hamza to writings calling for the killing of Americans and the downfall of the West. Analysts say the documents offer a glimpse of the inner workings of al-Qaeda and the man who led the organization. The Office of the Director of National Intelligence says hundreds of additional documents are under scrutiny for possible future declassification and release. Now, this week on Africa 54, we are airing a series of in-depth reports on U.S. police and the difficult challenges they face as they seek to improve their relationship with the community. U.S. President Barack Obama has issued an executive order to keep certain military-style equipment out of the hands of local police departments. Now, there is public debate about what influence, if any, the federal government should exert over local police. Arash Arabasadi has our report.
Former and current law enforcement officials testified in Washington Tuesday at a hearing to discuss policing strategies in the 21st century. In the wake of police shootings of black males, the argument is whether there should be greater federal oversight of local police departments. Susan Rahr is a 33-year veteran of the King County, Washington Sheriff's Office.
The requirement to use body-worn cameras must consider local and state laws related to the gathering, management, and disclosure of data, as well as local and state laws protecting individual privacy.
But David Clark Jr. of the Milwaukee County Sheriff's Office says there's been too much national scrutiny of police since the riots in Ferguson, Missouri.
Police use of force should be scrutinized, locally that is. It should be examined in terms of factual data and circumstances that led to the police action and not from the emotional foundation of false narratives or catchy slogans like hands up, don't shoot.
Some living in communities where tensions with police remain high say local scrutiny of police has not gone far enough.
I'm mad because I'm sick and tired of hearing my brothers and sisters being murdered by these police right here.
Not so fast, says Sheriff Clark.
We're not hearing a lot of conversation about what the community can do to better themselves. All we're hearing about is how the police can get better, or what the police should be doing.
Tuesday's hearing is the start of a discussion about moving forward. For police in the community and the people they're sworn to protect, it's the next part of a narrative that some say has gone on for far too long. Arash Arabasadi for VOA News, Washington.
Africa 54 and the stories we covered. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. And check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Coming up, new Ebola cases spike in Guinea and Sierra Leone. How are health officials prepared to cope? Stay with us.
This is BizBeat. General Motors rolled out the Chevy Volt plug-in hybrid electric in 2011. Today, fuel prices have dropped substantially, creating less consumer incentive for hybrids and all-electric cars in some places. Analyst Bruce Bazowski says sales fluctuations are to be expected.
As the manufacturers really work on developing better batteries, that's really going to help turn the corner on the pure electrics as well as for hybrids.
In Europe, though, petrol remains relatively expensive and sales of all electric vehicles are up compared to last year. In the first quarter of 2015, EV sales in the European Union are up 58% from last year, outpacing the U.S. But economist Nick Loris at the Heritage Foundation says EVs need more work to become mainstream.
I think it's about the dollar, it's about reliability, it's about comfort.
And infrastructure. EV charging stations remain scarce. For VOA's BizBeat, I'm Philip Alexio.
Well, it's time now for our Tuesday Health Report, and joining us now is Africa 54 Health correspondent Lino Mudu to tell us how genes work. Lino.
Hello, Vincent. Scientists say the seasons appear to have a profound effect on how human genes work. A team of researchers analyzed blood and tissue samples from more than 16,000 people living around the world. Of the 22,000 genes they scrutinized, a quarter showed clear sign of seasonal variation. Scientists also found genes involved with immunity, the body's defense against infection, were more active in cold months. And while this helps a fight off viruses such as flu, well, it may trigger or worsen conditions such as arthritis where the body attacks itself. And the World Health Organization says there is a substantial increase in the weekly total of new Ebola cases in Guinea and Sierra Leone. In its latest update on the outbreak in West Africa, which has affected nearly 27,000 people with more than 11,000 deaths, the WHO reports that the week ending on May 17th saw the highest weekly total of confirmed cases of Ebola in over a month. There were 35 cases reported from Guinea and Sierra Leone. Guinea reported 27 cases, compared with 7 to the previous week. The WHO says the geographical area of transmission has also expanded compared with recent weeks. Because of the proximity to Guinea-Bissau of the recent cluster of cases in the Guinean prefecture of Bokeh, a response team from Guinea-Bissau has been deployed to the border to assess points of entry. Joining us now live via Skype from Paris, France, for the latest is Carissa Guild, a registered nurse and medical team leader with Médecins Sans Frontières, MSF. Ms. Guild, welcome to Africa 54.
Thank you for having me.
So there are new cases emerging in Guinea and Sierra Leone. What is your analysis of the situation presently?
Last week or 2 weeks ago, they reported 9 cases in the two countries, 7 being in Guinea. When you looked at the details of those 7 cases, 4 of the cases were community deaths. So 4 people had died before we realized that there were cases of Ebola, which just shows that right now there's transmission happening in those two countries that we're not aware of. And this means that the outbreak is still ongoing as it has been.
So it's still ongoing. We've seen a case in Liberia where the country was at some point the highest infected in terms of number of people. Now it has been declared Ebola-free. What has worked with Liberia that is a lesson learned, really, that could be duplicated or is being duplicated in the other two countries?
I don't know if there's a lesson learned between Liberia and the other two countries. I think the same strategy has been put in place for all 3 countries, more or less. It's the same actors, and the governments are different, and the people working are different, but the response to Ebola is the same. Perhaps in Liberia, it was most of the transmission happened in Monrovia, which was a very tightly populated group of people. And once they realized that the communities had the power to stop transmission and to stop Ebola, the communities really stepped in and did a lot of work. I think the same thing is probably happening in Guinea and Sierra Leone, but maybe not as effectively right now. And there has been a lot more resistance in Guinea since the very beginning of the outbreak by the population.
So what is your perspective in terms of where the priority should be now?
I think that there's two priorities. I think that there is definitely a need to stop this outbreak, which means 0 cases. We saw that this whole thing began with 1 case. Now we had 7 cases last week in Guinea, which has rose. These 7 cases have brought forth 25 new cases, so it can grow rather rapidly. So I think, yes, having heightened vigilance, trying to discover all of these transmission chains is very important. I also think we need to look at a little bit post-Ebola. Right now, the 3 countries haven't had very well working health systems for over a year. It's very easy to see in Liberia right now. They just had their first mass measles campaign. There were lots of measles cases in the city, so there's a lot of other things in rebuilding health structures, which is also going to have to be a priority.
Okay, Ms. Gill, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks a lot.
And that was Carissa Gill. She's a nurse and team leader with MSF. That's our Africa Health Report for today. Vincent?
Well, thanks. Now be sure to watch for Medu every Tuesday and Thursday for the latest health news in Africa right here on Africa 54. Welcome back. Now, when Albina Dubois-Vray was confronted with one of life's most difficult losses, the death of her only child, she turned her grief into something positive. She created a legacy for her son by helping people around the world out of poverty in his name. VOA's Margaret Bashir has her story.
Albina Dubois-Vray was born into privilege. She had a successful career in film and literary arts and married a business magnate. She seemed to have the charmed life. But in 1986, her world was forever changed when her son Francois-Xavier Bagnou was killed in a helicopter accident.
He was a very dedicated search and rescue pilot, and he lost his life at age 24 in a mission in Mali.
She created FXB Village to accomplish what Francois-Xavier died too soon to do himself.
So when I set up this organization, I wanted it to take on his commitment to rescuing people on a large basis. And that's why I started with those children who were so destitute and the people living in poverty.
FXB began in 1990 in Uganda, helping children orphaned by HIV/AIDS and their guardians move from poverty to self-sufficiency by investing in them. Today, FXB works in 8 countries with some of the highest chronic poverty rates in Africa, Asia, and Latin America. 80 to 100 families at a time are brought into the program or village for 3 years. In the first year, they receive free food, health care, education, and housing, so the breadwinner can focus on building a business to sustain the family long term. Whether it is the purchase of a single cow, a sewing machine, or farming tools, FXB provides it all. None of it is a loan.
And so the second year, they have made savings and they participate in the budget about 25%. We invest 75%. Third year, it's 50-50. Fourth year, they're on their own.
She says building a family's ability to provide for itself has helped lift more than 80,000 people out of poverty over the past 25 years. The program costs a modest $125 to $230 per person per year. But the payoff is huge, with 86% of families who have completed the program succeeding in getting out and staying out of extreme poverty.
It also gives women, which I see, mostly women and children, but mostly women, back their dignity, their pride, and it unleashes all their capabilities of creativity, of work.
When people are empowered, she says, they can help themselves and their families achieve a better life. Margaret Bashir, VOA News, New York.
Well, it's time now for a short break. Still to come on Africa 54, one of Bollywood's most famous beauties is back on the big screen. We'll be right back.
Nous avons le renseignement, ce que nous appelons le renseignement judiciaire.
I wanted to present music and a side of American culture that is most important to me, that is a part of who I am. They're going to get some incredible performances. That's one of the things I love, bringing these artists in so you can get to see them do what they do. It's soul music, and that's what music is. It's that which comes from the soul.
Welcome to Africa 54. Here's what's trending. A Bollywood star makes a comeback at Cannes. Former Miss World Aishwarya Rai Bachchan was at the French Riviera Film Festival to premiere her new film, Jazba, or Passion. Jazba is the 41-year-old actress' first film in 5 years. She's married to fellow Bollywood superstar Abhishek Bachchan and is the daughter-in-law of the king of Bollywood, Amitabh Bachchan. Well, next up, hail Vladimir. About 15 local Cossacks unveiled a bust of Vladimir Putin in a village 30 kilometers to the north of St. Petersburg, depicting the Russian president as a Roman emperor. Putin is depicted in a breastplate and flowing toga. Putin has publicly repudiated attempts to create a personality cult, although his portrait have become ubiquitous in the offices of government officials, as well as proliferating on T-shirts, refrigerator magnets, and stickers on sale commercially. Well, and finally, eye tracking technology makes virtual reality hands-free. An advanced virtual reality headset could be a game changer for the entertainment industry and give people with certain disabilities new powers of communication and interaction. That's according to the developers. The Fove headset uses eye tracking technology to allow the wearer to control all actions by their eye movements. The company is now launching a crowdfunding campaign on the Kickstarter platform to raise $250,000 to perfect the product and start manufacturing its headsets. And that is what is trending today. Well, that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com for more news. Tune in to VOA's evening radio show, Africa News Tonight, at 1800 UTC, and in the mornings to Daybreak Africa between 0300 and 0600 UTC, Monday through Friday. Thanks a lot for watching. From all of us here in Washington, have a good night.
Welcome to the Voice of America's Newswords. In the United States, the freedom to say what you think is an important right. Listen to this story about a Pakistani group fighting to open the internet.
Activist Farhan Hussain of the media advocacy group Bites for All says his group is involved in 2 court cases against the government for its censorship and surveillance activities.
Censorship means someone or something, usually a government, restricts information. Books, movies, letters, or internet websites are reviewed, and items thought to be offensive often are banned.
So the next time you hear the word censorship, your American English will be good enough to know what this newsword means.